here, on the very rim of known space, justice is a long way away.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to the Space Game Junkie Podcast. I, as always, am your co-host, Brian, and joining me, as always, is your co-host, Spaz.
Currently traveling beyond the rim.
Your co-host, Julie.
Hello from the great north where the corn and the hot peppers are high.
Has the smoke cleared yet?
The smoke has cleared and the Carolina Reapers are ripening.
Oh, is that a good thing? I don't know what that is.
That's a very good thing. It's the hottest hot pepper ever invented.
Oh, and that's in the Chicago area?
No, it was invented by a guy in Carolina, hence Carolina Reaper, but it makes excellent hot sauce. 1.6 mil on the Scoville scale. We got a garden full of different kind of hot peppers.
No, thank you. I will pass. Also joining us is your co-host, Thorsten.
Hello. I don't know where I am, but I am somewhere.
Your co-host, Jacob.
Space.
We love it. And your co-host, David.
Considering how much I blew up in this game, all I had to say is, all I wanted was a code name of my own. Jacob gets that.
You do blow up a lot in this game. Friends, welcome back. We had a couple weeks off due to vacation and internet outages because of a hurricane and all sorts of things. But we're back, and we have guests joining us this week from Seattle and Cambridge, Massachusetts, are Brian and Max of Forbidden Realm Simulations to talk about a little roguelike game that we have pretty much fallen for here on the channel, WarpVector. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey guys, good to be here.
Hi, yeah, thanks for inviting us.
Well, thank you for making your game. I try and play all the space games because, name of the thing. And it's all over the place. Sometimes you'll be disappointed. Sometimes you'll be, you'll get what you expect. And sometimes, like with your game, you'll be very pleasantly surprised. We really, really, really love your game. I gotta say, it's got that old school. Definitely got that old school like NetHack rogue sensibility, but in space, and it's great. So first off, thank you for making it. Now you said before the show this is your first game. How did that come about?
So originally this was an entry for the 7-day roguelike competition in 2017.
Huh.
Is that right?
I think it was 2018.
2018. Yeah, so I was playing a lot of Rogue at the time, and I don't know if you guys ever played that. It's like it's kind of like the original Rogue, but it's all in ASCII, but they have a lot of like color effects and animation.
Oh, Brogue with a B?
Yeah.
Yeah. Brogue is great. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Brogue is great.
Oh, yeah. So I love Brogue, and I've done some work on like the community edition and that kind of thing. And yeah, so I was really into Brogue, and so I wanted to make this for 7-day roguelike. And at the time, I was playing the Star Wars Armada board game. Where it's kind of like X-Wing, if you've played that, where like the ships, the miniatures have like momentum, and so like if you're going at speed 3 on one turn, you have to go at speed 3 on the next turn unless you actually take an action to change your speed, that kind of thing. So I wanted to do that for the 7-day roguelike. So we had a version that just ran in the browser. And yeah, Max made some audio, made some like music tracks for it. And yeah, I think there were a couple of, it didn't really like take off and become a huge hit based on that 7-day roguelike, but there was, there's like the 3 people who are assigned to review it in that game jam, if you guys are familiar, and they all sort of liked it. Said it was like interesting and creative, but it was kind of janky and not really polished that much. So we had basically a 2 or 3 year period where we didn't work on it at all, and then just sort of picked it up again, maybe like a year ago or something, and then made Yeah, and like I was mentioning so before we started recording, so like we're not game developers. We're just regular computer programmers. So this whole game is made with like a web development stack. It's all JavaScript. The ASCII characters you see are actually rendered like in the DOM, like in the browser. So it's all HTML. Everything is rendered like that. And the app itself is Electron, which is like like what Slack and things like that use to make
really?
desktop versions of web apps. So,
wow! So this is
we just picked it up and fixed the issues that we had from the game jam and just polished it up and converted it into Electron and put it on Steam.
Oh man, the mentioning of JavaScript gives me goosebumps.
You are a man braver than most.
I've tried to wrap my brain around JavaScript and I just can't. I could never be a programmer. I've tried multiple times. I don't have the brain for it. But it always amazes me when someone comes by and writes a game in Java or JavaScript. And I love how this is basically the same thing as Slack, which I was just using. That's amazing. Now, is it harder to make a game in that kind of I mean, you've never made one before, but like, do you know if there are any advantages or disadvantages to making it the way you guys made it? Because I know nothing.
Well, I mean, at least for me, I think Unity has kind of a steep like learning curve. Like, I've tried starting a couple of Unity projects, and there's just so much going on, and it's it just I'm sure if like I really was like committed and I spent months and months studying it, I could get good at it, but like it's just so much easier to do something you already know how to do than to try to learn new skills. So I'm sure this isn't the best way to make a game like this, but I mean, there's just like no barrier to entry. I already know how to do everything, so it's it's just the easiest for us, I think.
I think especially for roguelikes where there's a single mode of interacting with it, and a lot of the content is text and grids, like it lends itself very naturally, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's true. We
kind
of get the best of like so like the grid itself is just like a grid of characters. But we don't, unlike a roguelike you play in the terminal, we don't actually have to exactly lay windows and overlays and things like that on top of the grid as well. So those can, sometimes you'll notice like transparency in some of the pop-ups, or they're not perfectly aligned. They can be resized differently. So there's like advantages because we get the full grid, but we also get, like regular formatting for other UI elements.
So, does this kind of thing put any limitation on the system, on the space, on the systems, on the ships? Like, are there any kind of limits you've run into when you build a game like this?
I would say one challenge that's come up has actually been getting it to work smoothly on platforms besides Windows. Actually, there's some ways to make it work. I don't know if any of you have tried it on like we don't support Mac OS, and Linux is like a little bit rough right now.
Supporting Mac is very difficult, so I don't blame you on that one. But
yeah,
I guess that leads to I had a question. Do the star systems have like a boundary? Do they stop, or can they just keep going indefinitely? Because on the video, I don't know if you saw, I ran to like 3 frigates, and I just kept running until my warp drive charged, and I never ran into like an edge or a boundary or anything. So I was wondering if there's
Yeah, there's no edge. I think the AI has a point where it will stop following you. That was implemented at some point. I don't know if it's still there, but yeah, I think the AI will stop following you eventually. But there's no edge, and there's no hidden extra material out there. Like everything is like pretty clearly concentrated in the middle of the system.
Well, that totally makes sense, but
turns out space is in fact mostly space.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
I was glad that the fact that there was no boundary, because I just had to keep running away from these these frigates that were shooting at me while my warp drive charged, so I can jump the heck out. And I just noticed I could have kept going, which was neat. So making a game like this, what would you say is the biggest challenge using Java and HTML and all that?
I think some of the biggest challenges that have come up have actually been, I would say, testing, both in terms of testing that the game functions correctly, but also in terms of like doing enough play testing to make sure that the balance and the difficulty and the pacing makes sense. And so, yeah, and I think it's especially true in a game like this where there's a lot of like very complex edge cases where it's like, the AI does something that's especially stupid in a very particular set of circumstances when the ship is in a certain place and the planets are in a certain place. And there can be a lot of like little bugs and details that are very hard to track down and reproduce.
Yeah, I think testing the AI is hard because, I think it's a mistake to want like super, super smart AI. Like, it's fun to make an enemy crash into a star or something. But you got to walk like a fine line because you don't want it to be like laughably stupid. You want it, like if you make them collide with a star, you want to feel like you accomplished something, not necessarily like you just had a stroke of like completely dumb luck.
Right, it should be like a mistake that a space pirate might actually make.
I think that's the line a lot of game developers have to try and walk, like not making the AI too smart, but not making it too dumb either. Like you want a challenge, but you want it to feel like it's in the universe. You want it to feel like it's in the world and not, I'm playing against a game AI. You know what I mean? So,
hey, another hard like testing thing for us is like, like in most roguelikes, like I mentioned Rogue, right? Like you start on level 1 and there's like rats and jackals and kobolds and they all die in one hit, and that's how you learn how to play the game, and it starts to get harder from there. But like we really have like kind of like there's like a kind of a hard floor on how weak an enemy can be, right? Because an enemy needs to have firing arcs, it needs to have power and shields and all these different components. Like so it can't be substantially. You can't have a spaceship in WarpVector that's like functionally like a rat in Rogue, So like if like the weakest enemy in the game is half as strong as the starting player, that's kind of like a big. Even though the player even does outgun like a frigate in this game, but like still with the learning curve, people can have trouble even with like a sloop the first time they play, and we really can't make enemies any weaker than that, other than maybe like some kind of like fighter or something. But so like that makes it a little bit harder to sort of get the balance right, because we can't really just like copy the balancing from pre-existing roguelikes into this game. That makes it a little bit harder to test and balance as well.
Interesting, you went for ye olde naval terms for your spaceships there.
I love that, though. I think that's great.
Yeah, I like it. I don't know.
No one's ever called anything a sloop since 1890, I think.
Yeah, I don't think sloop is. I don't think sloop's real.
Okay. Yes, sloop is not. I mean, so a lot of sci-fi games, they use corvettes and frigates and terms like that.
Yeah.
And I was just looking for like what's smaller than a frigate, and then the answer is a sloop. But you never, for some reason you never see the word sloop in science fiction. I don't know why.
Because again, sloop is like hard associated with Age of Sail.
Yeah.
Whereas frigates and corvettes are still nominally in use, except no one knows what a frigate actually is. Frigates used to be like sort of mid-grade capital ships, and then they became these small escort ships, and now they're just destroyers but smaller, except when they're not.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
The definition has changed over time because things have gotten bigger.
I'll be honest, when it comes to like ship taxonomy in sci-fi, you could pretty much just pick random, and it'll be just about as accurate.
Yeah.
Like if you're going for historical fiction, then of course you have to at least stick to what things were called at the time. But if you're doing sci-fi, just pick random.
I remember in college, this is a tangent, I was playing a science fiction role playing game that a friend designed, and I brought in the Dreadnought from iWar as my ship, as the hero ship. And everyone laughed at the name Dreadnought because it was one of the smallest ships in the game, size-wise.
Yes, yes. Named after HMS Dreadnought, the biggest, scariest battleship of its era.
But it was a Corvette. It was technically in iWar it's a Corvette, and in this role-playing game it wasn't. It was barely the size of a frigate, and so everyone laughed at the name. Everyone laughed at the name Dreadnought.
Since we were talking about combat, there's something that I wanted to bring up, and that when I tried fighting the pirates, I found myself more often than not using harsh language. I would try and fight the pirate, and it would say, "You are trying to hail the SS Destructomatic," and they ignore your hail. And part of the problem is the comms and the firing arc look just exactly alike to me. Oh, also, when I won't ask for it to be on Switch because there's no way you could get the program to run on Switch.
That's a good point.
Yeah, I don't think we could port to Switch. I haven't looked into that, but yeah, the comms as a weapon. I don't know. It just seems like, because the comms is like a targeted.
I mean, you need a colorblind option.
Yeah, that's true. We haven't really done any work into. I know like red green is a common type of color blindness, and I think we use red and green for like if you have an ally, it's green instead of yellow, and an enemy is red. So I think there is an issue there.
So also, I wanted to point out, I had no idea there was no way to soft land on this planet, on any planet, apparently. And so I kept crashing into every planet, and I read through your guides, and I said, what in the heck am I doing wrong with this? And Frank Thurston said, no, it's designed like that. You have to crash.
Okay, yeah, so let me kind of explain this. Okay, so my original thought process with this is, right, so in real life, when a spacecraft like re-enters an atmosphere, it suffers damage, right? Like, space shuttles, the thermal tiles come off, like there's heat shields, there's parachutes, right? It's hard to land a spacecraft, right? And like you're always going to take damage, right? So the idea is, even when you do a successful landing, you would take at least a point of damage, but the idea is you would charge up your shields. If your shields were charged, so like you weren't making an emergency landing in the middle of combat, you could, negate the damage from landing. That was my initial thought. But yeah, basically almost 100% of the people who have played the game just thought there was a bug, thought they were doing something wrong. I think that basically we need to change because actually, so right now the damage you take is like proportional to the speed, right? So if you're going at speed 6 when you go over a planet, assuming you don't jump over the whole thing in one tick, if you're going speed 6 and you hit the middle of the planet, you take 6 times as much damage than if you're going at speed 1. So, but I think we're going to change that on the next patch so that you actually suffer no damage if you're going at speed 1 as well. So you wouldn't suffer damage until speed 2. Because again, basically nobody understands what we were going for.
Yeah, I kept
To be honest,
Julie first, then Thorsten. Julie, go ahead.
kept trying to do less damage than 2, and there's absolutely no way I can do that. However, I did that way come upon the wonderful option of being able to say, how nice for the xenobiologist to be willing to sacrifice himself for our safety. Bye, see you later. And my thought was, if he didn't want to die on the planet, he shouldn't have put the red shirt on in the first place.
Yeah. Did you guys all get a very large number of those alpha predator?
Yeah.
Yes.
Events? Yeah. I think that might be a bug.
That's probably a bug. I doubt it's supposed to happen that often. So yeah, that's probably a bug.
But I watched your stream and I saw you got that like probably like 75%
all the
or
time.
something.
So often.
Yes.
It should seem out of place. So it's bugs happen. Not mad about it. It's still a fun game. Thorsten, what did you want to say?
I wanted to go back to the landing issue. I think it's a great idea the way you did it, actually. So I wouldn't change it, to be honest. I mean, I get that people don't get why you did it, but the idea in itself is good.
Honestly, it doesn't bother me either. It's like once I grokked what was going on, it reminded me of landing in the Sega Genesis version of Starflight, where if you're going too fast and you don't use if you don't use your engines properly, you will crash and cause a lot of damage. So you gotta pay attention.
See, I guess I'm stubborn that way. I spent a lot of time trying to soft land on planets, figuring I'm doing something wrong. If there were a way to let the player know, no, you're always going to take a little damage, then, I'll stop trying to do it.
I think it's more of a communication issue maybe on our part. Like if we had, either like some kind of tip or like some kind of change to the way the damage is reported to you, maybe that would make more sense to people.
Yeah, like a different sound or a different text message.
Or maybe the first time you land on a planet, a little info pops up like, hey, if you want to land properly, you got to go slow. Just a little explainer text. Maybe that would do it. Because it didn't take long for an idiot like me to grok it. So if I can do it.
Well, even though I went through a lot of xenobiologists or whatever they were, I really appreciate the sense of humor, so I don't mind losing the crew members for that.
Yeah.
No, that was
one of the things we were hoping to happen with those encounters is to have it be kind of a push your luck element, where it's like, are you willing to stake more of your crew in order to save the ones who are at risk?
I enjoyed that, actually. I mean, I never got tired of that event. I just figured it happening so often was a bug, but I never got tired of it. So it's still a fun event.
One thing I really like is we have a couple of, I think the alpha predator names and the like anomaly names and a few other types of things are kind of like procedurally generated. So there's like the name of the predator is different every time, like an arachno, hydra, or whatever, and I think those are really funny. So I kind of like the events. Just even though we made the random name generators, I think the events are funny just to see like some of the kind of absurd sounding names, like an Ultra Gorgon or whatever that'll pop up.
Yeah, I do have a request if you can somehow make those anomalies a little easier to see. I'm not colorblind, and even I had trouble sometimes finding them. Like I really had to squint. I mean, unless that's intentional. If that's intentional, I don't know. But there are times where I'd go to the jump map. It's like 3 unexplored anomalies. Where the hell are they? Like, are they right next to the sun? What am I doing? Why can't I see them? So I did have an issue. I did have an issue seeing the anomalies every now and again. So there's a way to maybe have them stick out a little more. I don't know. That would be.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. We could do like a corona type effect, like the way the quasars have, or something like that, maybe.
Yeah, something like that would probably be very helpful. Yeah, like I don't know what you could do to the font to make it stick out a little more. But yeah, there were definitely times where it's like, where do I have to find? I would just get very confused. And I love anomalies. They terrify me, but at the same time, you can get some nice bonuses out of them. But they'll also hurl you into very dangerous places.
Yeah, actually, so watching your original stream of this kind of persuaded me that I think we need to change the anomalies a bit, because so my new theory is that warp anomalies should be a different color or visually distinct from other anomalies. Either that or like the most common anomaly type to link systems together should be one that just gives you the coordinates. Because I think like just randomly getting warped out like 50% of the time is like kind of a, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's that. I don't think it's like the best way to do it. You know.
Well, maybe I wouldn't change anything in that regard. I like the unknown nature of it, but maybe less it a little bit. Instead of 50%, make it like 30% or something like that. Like make it happen less often, maybe.
Yeah, so I think the way the system is set up right now is that each star system has one link to the star system to its right and one link to the star system to its bottom, and then those are either anomalies or sometimes like a coordinates you find on a planet event, and then it adds a couple of anomalies on top of that, like, you know, like 0 to 2. So it's like 0 to 2 or 0 to 3 or something. So in most cases, you've got two warp anomalies in every system. I think that's the way it usually works.
Yeah, I mean that does make sense. And again, I don't mind like I don't mind a bunch of the anomalies being warp anomalies. That's part of it's. I feel like it's a roguelike. You should have that kind of danger, you know. Honestly, yeah. So I thought it was very fitting the way it is. Honestly, like my only problem is I can't see the anomalies. That's my only problem. Right. Is I have a tough time seeing them on the map. But I didn't have a problem with like, oh, this is a radiation anomaly. This is an energy anomaly. This is oh no, I jumped to where there's a hostile station. Oh no, that happened on the video I recorded. It jumped me to like, oh, there's 3 frigates. I'm gonna run away. But I think it's all fitting to being a roguelike. I think that's fine, honestly.
So I saw that Star Citizen came up in the chat, and I was going to say there actually is a connection between WarpVector and Star Citizen.
Wait a minute.
Explain.
Okay.
Oh, no.
Okay. Wait. Stop the presses. We got to hear this.
Pick your next words. Pick your next words extremely carefully.
Okay, here we go. Wait, buckle.
I don't know what I set myself up for here.
Click, click, clickety, click. I'm buckling up. Click, click, clickety, click. Okay, ready to go. Here we go.
The original game, you know, that Brian talked about, that was part of the 7-day roguelike, it had a different name. It was called Starfarer. And when we decided to, you know, polish up the game and package it to be, you know, distributed on Steam, we actually decided to change the name from Starfarer to WarpVector. And one of the reasons we decided to change the name was that Starfarer is actually kind of already a crowded name. And in particular, it is the name of a ship in Star Citizen, and if you
That's
search
true,
Starfarer,
it is.
It's one of the top hits.
There was also a game. It's an indie game. It was called Starfarer, and it changed.
Now it's called
name.
Star Sector.
That's right.
Now it's called Star Sector. Yes, because it was Starfarer.
Star Sector.
I think they changed it also because of Star Citizen. To be perfectly honest, I think that's why they changed their name of the game as well. No, WarpVector is a much better name. It sticks out. There are a lot of warp names, but WarpVector is a good one. So I think
I'm really happy with the new name. Like I was really sad at first. Like, I'm like, you know, I don't think Starfarer is going to work, and I was like kind of attached to the name. But actually, once like the longer I think about WarpVector, I actually think it's a lot better than Starfarer, and it's like more memorable and more.
I agree.
Perfectly suited to the game.
I agree. Yeah, Starfarer is like that's an easy to forget name, and there are a lot of games with warp in them that you could easily forget as well. Like this means warp and whatnot. But WarpVector sticks in the memory, I think.
Yeah.
And unlike Star Citizen, your game actually came out in the final form.
There it is. It's an actual game you can actually play today with things to do. Oh no. Sorry. We're very we try not to be reductive. We try not to be negative, but we have thoughts on Star Citizen around here. So
very strong feelings. Let's just say.
We've had a long time to gather those thoughts.
Yeah, we've had over a decade to feel how we feel, and so that's why when you brought up Star Citizen, we're like, whoa, okay, let's see where this goes.
Well, so actually, I'll add as a caveat: WarpVector is not quite in its final form yet. We're working on a new update now that's going to include some new features and some fixes, including I think one highlight is that it's going to unify the system for upgrading ships with the system for mounting and equipping weapons. So in the current version, there's a separate menu for saying, hey, I want to upgrade my capacitor bank versus I want to equip, an ion cannon.
Oh, yeah. Because one is the station menu and the other is the drag and drop thing. Yeah.
So what's gonna in the next version, all the ship upgrades, like if you want to upgrade your shield generators, your capacitor bank, those will also be part of that drag and drop menu. So you'll see everything in one place.
Oh.
And also what that lets you do is it creates a bit of opportunity to have a little bit more strategy in those upgrades. So instead of just being like, how many bit credits do you want to put into upgrading your capacitors, there actually will be, a few different choices of like different types of capacitor banks to choose from, depending on what trade-offs you want between like, the cost and the
weight,
and the capacity and the weight, right?
Like this capacitor.
Yeah, so we're adding.
That's a great. So this capacitor. So this capacitor like gives you a lot more energy, but it weighs a lot more, so it increases your mass, which means, blah blah blah. It's going to slow you down or make it harder to turn, or however that works.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. Oh, I love that. More meaningful choices. That's what we want as gamers: is more meaningful choices. So that's great.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about was the future of the game. And although I realize, there's short of a miracle, no way something like Java works on Switch, but there are games that have the capacity for storytelling, just like yours has here, and even some in-depth storytelling. And I'm wondering if at some point in the future, we're going to see that from your game.
Like a plot line with like more characters and that sort of thing.
With more characters, plot lines, because it's obvious just from the little bits of humor I've seen playing your game that there's a possibility for putting a lot of that into the game, and I'm wondering if we'll ever see something like that.
Well, I don't know, because it's a game, where you die a lot in this game, and I think it's hard to put that kind of storyline into games where you continuously die and reload and start over. I mean, it's not quite like something like a Baldur's Gate type game where you go through and you save your game and you reload and so I don't know. I think it could be. I don't know. So I think that'd be kind of hard to put into WarpVector.
There are a few plot elements that I think might be really cool to expand on. Although right now I think they're actually kind of hard to find in the game. So for example, I don't know if you encountered the Mogcon's fleet, which is something that you wouldn't encounter unless you get like pretty far and maybe get kind of lucky. But I think there's some elements there. Oh, you did? Okay.
It was. I jumped into a system, saw about 12 warships?
Oh, there.
Give or take. Decided I'm going to leave. And the music changed, if memory serves, which was
that was MogCon, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little... Oh, man, I feel like I feel like we don't really have a good path right now to actually be able to defeat some of the end game content, like the precursors and like the Khanate and like some of these like advanced factions. I think they're kind of, I think probably like out of the reach of most players to actually be able to defeat like with any kind of like reasonable loadout. I think you'd have to be so lucky to find like artifacts and stuff you need to beat those guys.
Hilariously enough, I found both of those during one playthrough, and during one playthrough,
oh my God.
Both of the times I decided to poke them, saw the damage they dealt, and left. So, in that sense, the game does recreate, the scientific method. Poke at it with a stick and see what happens, and lets you potentially survive the encounter if you're lucky enough.
So I have a question, if I may here. I know this is a roguelike, but is there any plans on adding like new starting loadouts or anything, like we could see in FTL?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, we haven't thought about that. Yeah, I mean, maybe something like that would work. It would work. Yeah, no, we did. It does have some FTL influence in it as well. Like a lot of the events and things are based on FTL. I don't know, Max, have you played FTL?
Not really, actually. But I take it you're thinking like starting loadouts that as you make progress, you might unlock the ability to have, right, to try setting up new loadouts to start the game.
Like a ship that starts with like an extra ion cannon instead of a laser cannon, or a ship that starts with a teleporter or something like that.
Yeah, something along those lines. I guess Stats could fill it in.
Yeah, that's one thing with FTL is that as you get further in and you complete, you could say, challenges with the various ships, you get more loadouts to play using those alternate versions of those ships. So they have different loadouts, maybe different crew, and different capabilities because of that.
Yeah, I mean, we could do something like that'd be the kind of thing where it would be most of the work would be in like play testing it and balancing it, and not necessarily in like implementing it, because I mean, we already have a bunch of types of equipment and stuff. Actually, because we're adding the new like modular equipment system with like auxiliary slots and stuff like that, maybe it would be easier to have a more variety in like starting ships. Yeah, I mean, we haven't really considered that, but I guess it's something that's a possibility.
I do find it amusing that we, how do I say, that we praised this game for not coming out in early access, and then when we're all going on, oh, but can you add this thing and this thing and this other thing?
Well, I mean, that's fine if we want to see more stuff. It's fine for a game to hit 1.0 and be within the developer's vision of what they had for a 1.0. But I think it speaks well to the game that we like it so much we want more of it. You know? So I think that's completely reasonable. Honestly.
Well, I mean, it's common for me to have problems with color blindness in the game. I mean, and it's not like I go out my front lawn and I say, "Oh, hey, the lawn's lovely red today." It's just that, and real world situation, which is what kept me, even though I qualified for flight school, here's what kept me out of the Navy and got me into the Army. The little lights at the end of the aircraft carrier looked the same to me. So I eventually, with enough playtime, I could have figured out how to tell the difference between when I was trying to use the comms and when I was trying to use the firing at something other than, yes, this time it worked. I fired at the ship, or maybe some little thing pop up that says, yes, you have to press this button more than once or something. But the game is perfectly playable and I enjoyed it.
Do you think there's some like user experience problems with the weapon system? Because I've definitely had cases where you either fire the wrong weapon, right, the wrong system, or you fire it at the wrong target. I've definitely had games where you get very far, but then in the heat of battle, you accidentally shoot your weapon at, say, a merchant station instead of a pirate sloop. And then you've completely screwed yourself over because now that merchant station starts coming after you.
That's actually happened to me. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, but honestly, I liked it. I really liked it because in real life you do mistakes too, and so I'm completely fine with that.
Yeah. I didn't really have to. I mean, it took a while to get used to the controls, but once I did, it made sense at target. fire. I found it fairly straightforward, honestly. And again, I am an idiot, so if I could find it straightforward, I think anyone can. I don't really think I had a problem with the weapon thing, though. I will admit the comms as a weapon thing did throw me off at first. That is, I would say that's not a common thing, but I liked it. At the same time, I liked it. I just wasn't ready for it.
No, yeah, actually, seeing playthroughs like yours is really helpful because it lets us see, somebody like really sits down and records the whole process of trying to figure everything out and figure out how to play the game. I mean, it shows us a lot about like what are the things that like people really enjoy, what are the things that are like challenging but still fun, what are the things that are confusing.
Yeah, that's
it's really helpful.
That's why I like coming to my streams cold to a game, because I've gotten so many comments from developers about that very thing, because so many people can edit a video. So many people could make a pre-recorded video about a thing and edit it wonderfully, and I have no editing ability whatsoever. So I just go in and like, oh, I can't figure this out. I'm stupid. But so many developers have said it's been very helpful to watch someone try and figure out how to play their game from jump. So I really love doing it that way.
Yeah. We had given out a few keys to people, and we'd gotten a little bit of feedback from some people in terms of just like a sentence or two in text. But yeah, you were actually the first person I've ever watched play the game. So that was So your stream was like super helpful. Especially the one thing I didn't realize, you were confused for a long time about when your warp core and your shields would recharge. And I didn't realize how that wasn't really clear at all until watching you play. So we're trying to make that more obvious in the next update as well.
Oh yeah, I did have some confusion about that. I mean, it made sense eventually.
It's totally understandable because we don't have any kind of explanation in the game of how that actually works.
Oh, you know what? That could be fine if the game is designed well enough that it doesn't take too much brain power to figure things out. Like in a slight tangent, I played another game recently called, was it Orbit Drop? I think it was called. No tutorial whatsoever.
Orbit Zero.
Orbit Zero. Thank you. No tutorial whatsoever. Has a GUI from 1994. It's a beautiful thing and has no tutorial or explanation of anything. Nothing at all is explained, and yet it's made well enough that you figure it out. And I enjoyed it immensely. So
mostly to trial and error.
Yeah, but still, I mean, I had no problem with that. It had it felt like a shareware game I bought at a computer fair in a Ziploc bag with no manual and just like 2 floppy disks, from 1994. And that's what it felt like. And you had to figure it out on your own. It was great. So don't beat yourself up too hard about that kind of stuff. That kind of stuff can be fun to figure out. But, I will grant you that, yes, it was confusing, but that's okay.
Yeah,
that's okay. It's fine because it's a roguelike. It's a rogue game. They're not meant to be the easiest things in the world, and I think I went in with the proper expectations where I still had a fun time, even though I was confused.
Well, one thing I wanted to ask you about, and since this is your first game, and you never know what's behind somebody's decision. I have a friend that started out as an ichthyologist and ended up an executive producer in the gaming industry. Did you just wake up in the morning and say, hey, I know a roguelike? What kind of brought you to this point in your lives when you said, hey, let's make this little roguelike game?
Well, yeah. For me, it was definitely Brogue, and so that Brogue was what got me into roguelikes. I mean, it's almost what got me into programming as well, and it got me into doing the 7-day roguelike game jam, and then I initially had started on WarpVector, which was then called Starfarer, and then Max hopped in the game jam a few days later. But yeah, so the main thing that drew me into it was Brogue, which I absolutely love that game, and yeah, I mean, I played that game for a really, really long time, and I'm super big fan of it.
Yeah, and I was going to add that although this is the first game that we've actually published, there's a few other games that we've made for just for funsies as part of like 7-day roguelike and just as like fun weekend projects. Yeah, a couple other roguelikes, stock market simulator. But this is the first time that, in part because of the feedback, the positive feedback we had gotten from some of the 7-day roguelike players, that we wanted to like actually try to package up and flesh out into a really playable game.
So wait, did you guys? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, nothing.
No, it's fine.
Oh yeah, well yeah. I was also just gonna say that visually, I think out of different projects we made, this is the one that looks the most like colorful and it's the most like visually compelling. I think it's sort of like a unique style. I think, and that was also one of the reasons why I thought this should be the project that we polish up more and try to put on Steam.
Well, I mean, it's very reminiscent of my favorite game in the world, Starfleet 2 Krellin Commander. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a little thing that came out in 1989, and now it's being revamped for Steam and GOG. But Mike, I was about to ask, did you guys meet through the Game Jam?
No. I mean, we've known each other for like 20 years. Yeah.
Oh, okay. It sounded for a second like you guys met through the Game Jam. Okay. I mean, that would have been adorable too. But well, let's go then. How did you guys meet then? Let's take it to that level.
Yeah. So I mean, we started playing D&D together in middle school or high school.
Oh God, you guys are young. Oh my God.
Yeah. No, we're old though. I mean, we met. I mean, I'm 38, so yeah. But we just started playing D&D. 20 something years ago and 25 years ago, and yeah, we've just been friends for a long time.
Well, slight tangent then. Speaking of D&D, have you guys tried Baldur's Gate 3 yet?
So we're about to. So yeah, I downloaded it, but yeah, I haven't started yet.
It's astounding. It's
Let me
absolutely
ask you,
astounding.
you're 38 and you think you're old?
Yeah, right.
Hey, my back hurts.
You're only as old as you feel.
I feel old.
I started playing games before the internet existed. But, I always compliment people, especially independent authors and developers who are willing to put themselves out there. Because while in my own field, while I've done a lot of writing articles about video games, this is the first time I ever put myself out there and wrote an actual book and finished it, and my friends say, you're finished with the book, you actually have to give it to us. And I said, well, I'm afraid to do what you've done, put it out there and have somebody say, oh my God, what about, and get all the negative feedback. And so I'm proud that you were willing to do this.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I was a little scared of negative feedback. I mean, that's, but so far it's almost all been positive. I mean, even the people who are confused or don't like it, they still sort of appreciate I guess the novelty of it because it's not like a ripoff of anything, and so even people who don't like it still seem to appreciate it in some way. So we've been pretty lucky avoiding negative feedback.
And I do think that the roguelike players and community is really quite supportive, because I remember when we first posted a trailer on I think it was our roguelikes and our roguelike dev, that yeah, there was a lot of positive feedback, which I think might be in part because sort of the nature of roguelikes is that a lot of players are also developers, even if not professionally, at least
Well,
they had to fiddle with it.
Another great thing about roguelikes is they invite experimentation. They invite people to take these crazy ideas and put them into this thing where, oh, you're only going to be playing for 5 minutes until you die. Let's try this crazy nonsense, So I think roguelikes give people an expectation that, oh, we're going to get into some shenanigans. and it really allows people to have an open mind about what they're going to get into.
But yeah, speaking of RPGs, I was going to say that another one of our, I don't know, sources of inspiration was the tabletop RPG Stars Without Number.
I've not heard of that one.
Yeah, if you guys have ever played that, if you look through like the equipment list or like the Starship equipment list, like a lot of the weapon names and things are from Stars Without Number, and a lot of the concepts.
That's now it makes click. Yes.
Yeah.
I've never heard of this one. Oh, this looks great though.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, it's a fun game.
And I think it has a really a really interesting system for doing like ship to ship space combat within a tabletop RPG.
Oh, that's good, because that's hard to. I've only done a couple of RPGs with spaceship combat, and it's like Fading Suns and Serenity, and probably the weaker parts of those RPGs where it was when they tried to implement spaceship combat. So
yes, I'm reminded of the time we brought up. Of the time he brought over Ken from Ad Astra. Remind me if he brought it up on the podcast. He presented space combat in RPGs as an issue similar to putting dolphins on chariots. Sorry, attaching chariots to dolphins. Because what ends up happening is if you got 5 people on the same ship, some of the people end up as dolphins, some of the people end up as people on the chariot. And if the dolphins are happy, the people on the chariot are drowning. If the people on the chariot are happy, the dolphins are flopping around on the ground without anything to do.
Huh.
Yeah, Stars Without Number handles it pretty well, because there's different roles you can take in the battle. So there's like a comms officer, an engineer.
Yes, but it still struggles with that issue of sometimes those roles aren't really they don't get to do much besides pushing one button.
Yeah.
Which is it's a universal plague of these types of games, so that's not necessarily a critique.
I'm going to add this to my wish list on Drive-Thru RPG, because I don't have time to play RPGs anymore, but I do love reading the books.
There is a free version of the book as well.
Oh, is there?
Which contains most of the stuff, yes.
Oh, okay.
What?
Oh, I'm looking at the one on Drive-Thru RPG.
Well, there's like 3 or 4 of these on Drive-Thru, so,
Yeah, this is the one.
Does not narrow it down.
The revised edition is the one I found. I'll link it. There we go. It's $20 for the PDF. But I'll look for a free version as well. That sounds like my jam.
Yeah, there's definitely a basic version, and the difference between the basic version is just missing like a couple of chapters on like mechs and stuff like that.
Yes, and robots and stuff.
Oh, there is a free version. Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I will definitely read that, because I love reading nice and crunchy RPG books. And this looks very crunchy. Oh man. I mean, since this is RPG inspired, might that be the next thing after WarpVector? Oh, no. A digital version of Stars Without Number.
The next game I want to work on is, so this is actually another project that we did for a 7-day roguelike a couple of years ago. I think this was the one we did in 2020. It was called Dead Man's Hand, and it was a Western roguelike.
Ooh.
Where you could play poker in the game. And it was... But the really cool thing about it is, if you went over and sat down at a poker table in this roguelike, you wouldn't like go into a separate mode or open up a separate window. It was like everything was happening. Every round in the poker game was actually a round in the real world. So like at your table, people would be, bidding and calling and doing all this stuff. Well, other people are walking around in the world, like outside of the saloon or coming into the saloon and joining the game. And so like you could shoot somebody in the middle of a card game. You don't need to go into a special mode to do that. You can just whip out your revolver and blast them, So, and and then like you could cheat, and then they would get upset, and then they would potentially threaten or attack you. And we started working on that for the 7-day roguelike, and we got to a state, where it was kind of complete as like a little town simulator where people would come in and gamble and pawn their stuff to get more money to gamble and so on. But there was no like gold. There was nothing to do outside of town. All you could really do is just gamble. But I would like to take that and sort of develop it more with like locations to explore and quests and things like that. And that's definitely what I would want to do. What I want to do next.
That sounds really fun. That sounds wow. That sounds really fun. Do you guys do the jam, this game jam every year, or just every so often?
We haven't done it. What did we do? Was 2020 the last time we did it?
Yeah, I think it might have been 2020. Yeah.
Because I'm guessing you have day jobs.
Yeah. we did a stock market game like in 2021 when there was like all this like hysteria around like GameStop and crypto and everything. We did a stock market simulator that had a lot of like meme humor in it. It was kind of like a parody and like kind of like a satire, and I guess also kind of like an homage a little bit, like meme trading. And that's actually that's still up, isn't it?
Yeah, that's still up.
Yeah. So if you go to it's FOMO Loco. I'll post it here in the chat. This was our other more recent projects. That's actually a multiplayer game. So if different people, if people join like at the same time, like if you join within 5 minutes of somebody, you'll end up in the same game as them. So you'll be able to like trade with other players and stuff. But it's this game has a lot of like humor in it. There's like there's like fake news stories that scroll by the bottom that are randomly generated, and they're all kind of funny or trying to be.
I see that
Misinterpretation of horoscope based for loss on spacecraft during attempted flyby of Venus. Okay. So you can buy, you can sell, you can hype. Oh man, this looks. I know nothing about stock markets, so I'm looking at this like my eyes are just glazing over. I know nothing about this sort of thing. Looks funny though. It's funny that these are actual other people playing this thing right now.
Well, no, so some of it, so you can see if you look at the ranking. So if there's a robot head, that means it's a AI, and if there's a person, that means it's another.
Oh, so these are all AIs. I see.
Usually, yeah. So I mean, when we first launched this game, I think the peak we ever had was like 20 people playing it, but usually it was just. Usually there's like one or two for like a week, and then now it's kind of died off, and usually there's nobody playing it.
Oof.
Right, but the bots are kind of funny.
Yeah.
Just sold my boyfriend's holofoil Charizard. Oh man, that's funny. All right, well, it's about an hour. We should probably start wrapping up. So folks, the game again is WarpVector. How much is it? It's not much. It's like what, $5?
That's like $5. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an amazing buy-in price for a game that'll keep you busy for a while over multiple sessions. It's not hard to play. It's got a lot of variety. It's very fun. It's very colorful. It's just really a lovely little gem of a thing. And we're apparently going to get more stuff for it soon with an update coming up soon. So that's awesome. Hopefully someday maybe there'll be a WarpVector 2, maybe. But yeah, go check it out. It's easily worth $5. It's worth $10, but they're charging $5. Go get it. My God. Coffee costs more than this. Go buy this. My God.
It's true.
Yeah. So next week, friends, no guest. We recently passed 9,000 subscribers on YouTube, which is amazing. I think it's amazing. And we're going to celebrate by playing some Rift Tracks the game. next week. So that's what we're going to do next week for the podcast. And yeah, then tomorrow for the stream, we're going to play Five Nations Renegades. The latest expansion, well, the first expansion, I guess, for Five Nations, the Spacey RTS. So that'll be fun. So, Brian and Max, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to talk about this really fun little game that just crept up and surprised us all. Such a fun little thing. We really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to playing more, and I can't wait for that new update that you guys are talking about. That's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on the podcast.
Oh, it's
yeah. Thanks for all the kind words. It's awesome.
And again, thank you guys again for being so flexible, folks. We were supposed to do this one last week, but when I came back from vacation, a hurricane had knocked out my internet, so I did not know if we were going to have internet. So we pushed it back a week, and we might have had to push it back again if I had tested positive for COVID. Speaking of COVID, get your vaccines, everyone. My God, I can't believe I have to keep saying this, but for God's sakes, please get vaccinated. My wife just had COVID, and because she was vaccinated, and thanks to Paxlovid, she was able to get through it relatively unscathed and tested negative within 5 days. Last time it took like 12 days to test negative. So, yeah, get vaccinated. God damn it. I can't believe I have to keep saying that, but I'm going to keep saying it until it's an endemic. And as always, thank you to our patrons for helping literally keep the lights on around here. And with that, we will see you back here tomorrow for some Five Nations. Have a great day, everyone.